This is Mark Holmes, the editorial director of Via Satellite, and we're back with another of our Thursday morning conversations. And I'm delighted to have joined me today Jim Rosenberg, who is the CTO and co-founder of Wavestream. Jim, welcome. How are you doing today?
Just fine. Good morning to you.
Excellent. Now, we always start these conversations with some non-satellite stuff, and then we go into the satellite stuff. So I'm going to ask you, now that we're starting to sort of travel again a little bit, we've obviously got our satellite show coming up as well. Maybe you can name me one or two of your favorite cities that you travel to on business, or one or two that you've really enjoyed and have left a lasting impression on you.
Well, I think Amsterdam has to be at the top of the list. I really enjoy Amsterdam and look forward to every time I can go there. And also, I like Singapore a great deal. We have a satellite facility there, and it's a place I always enjoy visiting.
Excellent. Also, as well, in terms of, I hear you're a bit of a guitar player. Is this true? I
Yes.
hear that. So let me ask you one or two music questions as well.
Okay.
One of my favorite questions was, I'm a music fan, but completely can't play an instrument or anything like that. Maybe a favorite concert you've been to, favorite gig, or one that you sort of look back on and think that was such a great experience to go to.
Wow, that's a tough one. There are a lot of them. I don't know. Maybe I'd say or some early days of Bonnie Raitt in the late 70s. I got to see her at a very, very small venue, and it was a terrific show.
Oh, well, where did you see her?
This was at the Brown University campus on Pembroke Field. This is the old days when Freebo was in the band.
Oh, wow.
Quite an amazing show.
It's always great, isn't it, when you get to see an artist in a small venue almost before they become big, and you can say, oh, I was there, I saw them when they were playing a venue like that and stuff. So wow, that sounds pretty cool. So we may come back to that because and stuff. Just one final music song. I hear you're a guitar player. Do you have a particularly favorite song that you like to sort of play and strum along to?
Wow. Again, that's tough. I think that probably in the classical music guitar, I like an Albanese tune called Leyenda, which is a really amazing piece, and not very many people can play it well. It's very difficult. I hope before I die to be able to play it.
Excellent. I'll have to check that one out. I haven't heard of that one. Now let's talk. Obviously, we've got our satellite show coming up, and lots to talk about in our industry right now. One of the big questions, and I know this is a subject that is very near and dear to you, has been this whole standards question. And we've obviously looked at sort of Diffie and DIS and what they're doing. I actually wrote a big story about the standards. Bodies sort of coming together. Sort of from your point of view, I guess sort of the significance of this and what this means. What are the wider ramifications for the actual industry?
So I think that L-band, the L-band interface was terrific and much needed when it was introduced, say 25-ish years ago, but it's kind of outlived its usefulness. And it's now, I think, become more of an impediment. But I think that there is some obviously natural inertia to such a big change because people have existing equipment that they don't want to just get rid of, obviously. But also, I think there's a lot of resistance because of the lack of a standard. And we saw this in a job we were bidding where the customer agreed that a digital interface would be the best choice, but was unwilling to do it because they didn't want to take the risk and they didn't want the sort of vendor lock-in. And actually that particular action or that particular incident was the thing that really prompted me to want to form a standards body because I realized that it just wasn't going to go forward without an open industry standard.
And what difference do you sort of see that sort of making going forward now? I mean, it's been, I mean, I've been in the industry about 15 years, and we've obviously had this conversation quite a lot over the years and stuff. And it almost it almost feels like it's a bit of a holy grail for the industry to sort of, to resolve this standards question. What will this sort of mean going forward, do you think?
It's a lot of different things. There isn't any sort of one thing, but it ranges from some very practical issues, like every time we do a piece of equipment for Ka band, the frequency plan is not a standard for the analog frequency plan. So, for example, X band is standard, C band is pretty much standard. Ku band has moved to the extended band frequency plan almost exclusively. So if somebody orders Ku band equipment, you know what the frequency plan is. But for Ka band, there is no unique frequency plan because L band is only a gigahertz wide and the available RF spectrum is so much wider. And so we end up designing unique equipment for every program. And it's expensive for us. It's more expensive and longer lead time for the customer. So I think one of the things is that having a digital standard will reduce the capital investment and the time to market for new constellations and new equipment, because people will be able to reuse what they have and not have to design fresh. So that's one thing. I think there are other issues. Obviously, the newer constellations are trying to move to more complex modulations so that they can have better spectral efficiency, more bits per second per hertz. And as one does that, the impairments that you have from the amplifier, distortion, frequency non-flatness, all these different kinds of impairments that various pieces of equipment generate along the way, can be mitigated much more easily with digital signal processing than with analog processing. And if I enter the RF equipment with a digital signal, I can apply that digital signal processing in that equipment. And what that means is if I have to rely on the modem to equalize the buck, for example, or to do digital pre-distortion for the buck, I don't really ever get to measure the system. The buck and the modem meet each other at the landing site or at the terminal, and there's no way to really validate that the equalization and the pre-distortion are working properly. If those are built into the buck, I can sell a buck that's extremely flat with very good signal quality, and I can validate that as it leaves the factory. So that's another advantage, is that I can have equipment that's going to be able to transmit these high order modulations with confidence and with no sort of chance of finger pointing. Then there are other things that are just completely sort of new, if you will. The idea of virtualizing a modem at a remote site and transporting the data over a public wide area network, with analog, that's not possible. So there are also sort of whole new applications that are enabled by this that didn't even exist before. So I think there's no sort of one answer. There's a whole suite of answers to that question. And I think that it goes from new applications to more efficient and lower cost deployments, and also being able to effectively use higher order modulations in a way that's going to be sort of easy and consistent. So it's a whole bunch of things.
It really is. I just have, I was sort of curious because up until the collaboration, the two organizations had announcements on the same day last year. As someone that's involved in the industry, I was curious as to your, I guess, sort of your viewpoint on that when you saw there was like.
That's fair. So I can only speak internally what happened at DIS, although I imagine the same thing happened at Diffie, which is we started this organization and we decided that we wanted to get a little momentum before we went public. We decided that we wanted to kind of get a standard up and in place before we had 30 people arguing over it. And so we decided we would work until we had sort of a draft basic standard and then announce. And so we were working, I wouldn't say in secret exactly, but we weren't working publicly. And my imagination is that Diffie was doing exactly the same thing. And the fact that we announced on the same day had more to do with the fact that we were each announcing just before satellite. So I think that's less of a coincidence than it looks like. but we were completely taken by surprise. And as far as I understand from the people in Diffie, they were completely taken by surprise. And so it was certainly humorous and awkward, but the reality is, from my perspective, it just meant that more of the industry was actually really interested in doing this. And so after kind of getting over the shock and the awkwardness, it was really a good thing. So now we're consolidating efforts. Diffie started out from a more they were kind of doing the organizational stuff first, and the DIS group was kind of more focused on the technical stuff first. So Diffie had all of the infrastructure. They had a 501c6, IEEE backing, and all of that. And so it was natural for Diffie to be the sort of publicly surviving entity. But a number of the DIS folks have officially joined Diffie, and I think the ones that haven't is probably more procrastination than that they're not planning on doing it. So far so good.
Excellent. We'll definitely stay tuned for that one, because it was slightly unusual for us when we saw both announcements. Sure. And then obviously we got to know that that they were joining forces. Let's talk a little bit about Wavestream, and in the run up to satellite, and I think it's going to be more exciting than ever this year, partly because I know we've had satellite shows the last 2 years, but hopefully there'll be a bigger international participation this year. It feels like we're returning a little bit to normal, although I still think it's still very different to where we were 3 years ago.
I agree.
The satellite world has changed immensely. I mean, we've sort of seen it, big constellation announcements, lots of hype around the industry that even maybe three or 4 years ago there wasn't necessarily there. For a company like Wavestream that's looking to tap into this, looking to generate business, what's sort of on deck for you this year? How are you looking to sort of play your role in the industry, and how will you grow the business?
So there are sort of three primary market segments that we're involved in. One is the gateway segment. For mostly we've been participating in non-geo, but in general we're looking at gateway overall, and that includes some military gateway that's geostationary. And there in that market segment, we're really trying to bring two things, I think, to the market. One is amplifiers that have really good signal integrity that allow the use of high order modulations and more complex waveforms, and have good enough phase noise and good enough flatness and so on to permit those waveforms to be transmitted successfully and close the link with them. And for these big geo gateways, we're working on amplifiers that are high availability amplifiers with some redundancy for certain parts and soft fail for other pieces of the amplifier, so that the amplifier has very, very high availability. And so these are really aimed primarily at kind of geo gateways or very large gateway sites that would have a big enough dish to support a large amplifier like that. In the one of the other legs we have is IFC, in-flight connectivity, and there for the current year, in terms of what we'll produce, it will be largely into kind of existing architectures, but we really believe that there's about to be a big change in IFC architecture. And there's likely to be flat panel steerable arrays rather than gimbal dishes, and that has implications for what we do. And this is another place where we think that the digital interface is potentially really important, because first of all, the coax that gets used on the aircraft is very heavy and very stiff, and it's hard to route. And people probably think of coax and they think of the stuff that they use in the lab, and this is not what gets used on aircraft. What gets used on aircraft is typically triply shielded. And one of the reasons for this is that all aircraft have this collision avoidance system that transmits very high power pulses right in the middle of L-band. And so you need to have this very, very low susceptibility cable just to get the signals from the modem to the amplifier without picking up this TCAS signal. So getting away from an analog coax carried signal to something that's digital, it reduces the susceptibility enormously, and that allows you to use much lighter. In fact, I was speaking with AEC just yesterday about digital interface over fiber for aircraft, because in ARINC 792, they're looking to move to fiber. So that's another big area, is working on digital interface for aircraft. And again, ARINC 792 is planning for multi-beam operation with simultaneous multiple modems, that is, talking to multiple satellites simultaneously. This means that you've got a lot of traffic and it's very dynamic, and trying to run that as an analog signal over dedicated coax from each radio port to each modem, very inflexible. It would be much better to have a digital system where I can assign the radio ports for the different beams to the different modems dynamically, which the digital interface enables. So I think that's another area where, we're not going to see a product this year out of that, but I think it's something that we'll definitely be working on. And our other major market area is in ground mobile applications. And for those, we've been working on amplifiers that are very small, easy to tightly integrate into an antenna system, into a terminal system, and trying to get the efficiency and the as high as possible, and because getting rid of the heat in the small terminals is a problem, and also getting the power up as high as possible to give them the best link that they can have. So those are kind of the big areas. I guess the other area that we're also going to be working on in the current year is looking at VBand, because that's definitely coming. And we're going to need to have amplifiers available when the RFPs start coming out, which I think is going to be very soon for those.
I mean, there's quite a few follow-up points that we could talk for, I think, quite a while about. I'll just a couple of them. VBand, again, it's one of those things I feel like I've been talking about for quite a few years. But you think it's relatively close? Well, we're going to start to see some things happening even this year in VBand? Well,
I don't think that we're going to see a VBand deployment this year. But the development time, I always say to people that, working on amplifiers, the difficulty goes up about as frequency squared. So when you go from Ka band to V band, things get a lot harder, and it's going to take longer to develop those amplifiers. And so, and the up converters and all of the ancillary equipment for that, down converters for the receive path too. So I think we have to get started. On the technology side, have to get started a little earlier than you would normally think of relative to the deployment, because it's going to take us longer to develop stuff. So I think that even if the deployments are 3 or 4 years away, we really have to be working now to have the equipment ready in time.
You think there'll be deployments in V-band in 3 or 4 years' time, though?
I think it's possible. It's obviously, we're not in control of who launches what on satellites, but based on the activity that we're seeing in terms of RFIs and even just informal conversations with satellite operators, I think that's possible. Okay. I think that's certainly their goal.
I want to go back to IFC. You made some interesting comments, and it's a market I know well, and we have an event called Connected Aviation Intelligence this year, which we're super excited about. You spoke about sort of new architecture and new digital architecture on planes, and again, we talk to airlines all the time, and it's this mantra of being able to refresh their fleet, put equipment on, and for that to be I guess a more simplified process going forward. Again, what's sort of the timeline really for this sort of new architecture?
That's a really good question. I think that I'm not sure I want to predict to the end point. I think that I would hope that by within 1 year, we could get the outline of the architecture and the associated standards sort of nailed down so that we all know what it is we're trying to build. Because right now, we really don't even know that. So I think that between the Errant group and Diffie, I hope we can kind of come to an agreement on, what would represent best practices and modify our corresponding standards appropriately. And my hope would be that we can do that within a year. I think that it's possible that there could be sort of, reference implementations, kind of prototype demonstrations, within maybe a year and a half. But I don't think we're going to be seeing equipment for sale for, I'm going to say, at least 2 years. And maybe it could be a little longer. I think it depends on how aggressive both sides want to be about this. Wavestream is very interested in pushing this forward. We think it's the right way to go, and that it helps everybody. I think this is one of these things where everybody benefits from it. The equipment manufacturers benefit, the installers benefit, and I think that the passengers will benefit too. I think it will be all around a win-win. But people are going to have to be willing to sort of bite the bullet and be the first in the pool. And I think Wavestream is willing to be the first in the pool on the RF equipment side. We got to see who's going to be the first in the pool on the modem side and on the installer and aircraft side.
And just sort of final, I guess, satellite related thing. Obviously, satellite show is very, very close now. If I'm stopping by or seeing Wavestream, what's the number one thing that you'll be sort of showcasing at satellite that's you're really, really excited about to show the industry?
Well, we've got actually 3 separate demos that we're planning to run. I'll try to describe each of them briefly. I think there'll be different excitement for different people. One is a digital interface demo. So we have a demo where we've got a modem that's emitting a digital stream. We're taking it up to Ka band, down converting it, and demodulating it so that you can see the whole link with the digital interface. And we have another demo that is about the sort of signal integrity in these gateway amplifiers. So we'll have a gateway amplifier that we build, and we'll be showing what can happen if you use equalization and digital predistortion and what that does to allow you to get to these higher order modulations in terms of reducing the error vector magnitude. And I think that will be good for the people who are interested in that. And then we're also going to have a demo that surrounds this high availability amplifier that will be interesting for the people who want to see that. I think all of those are going to be fun demos to see. Fantastic. And we'll be doing this over in the Silver Linden Room at the Marriott Marquis across the street from the convention center. We'll have a room set up in which we're running these demos.
We'll look forward to that. And I just want to go back to some of the other stuff now. Thank you for all of and really looking forward to obviously seeing you all at Satellite as well. We started by talking about music. And so we started, we know you're a guitar player. You were lucky enough to see Bonnie Raitt before she was a big star in the 70s. So I'm going to go on to like movies and dramas now. I'm going to end by, a favorite movie or a favorite drama, one that you really enjoyed watching. Maybe it's one you enjoyed watching during lockdown. So give us a recommendation, Jim.
So as a recommendation for a drama, a movie that I think is really good that didn't get quite the publicity that maybe it should have, is a small independent film called Unsundees. And it's a Canadian film in French, but subtitled in English. And it's when I heard the review for it, I knew nothing about it. And the people who reviewed it said that not all movies could be as good as this one, but all movies should endeavor to be as good as this one. And that made me want to see the movie. And I came away from the movie feeling that was a really accurate review. It's an amazing movie.
I haven't heard of that. I'm definitely going to shamelessly Google that after this conversation and find out a little bit more about it. I'm going to go back and end on a music question. My I guess my final question. That, you know, do you have a tune in the morning that sort of really, you know, that when you hear it, like really gets you going and thinks, right, I'm going to, like, you know, smash the day today, and a sort of tune that really sort of, you know, gets you sort of pumped up for the day? You know, give us a tune, give us a happy, you know, a happy sort of energetic tune to listen to.
Gosh. I would say almost anything by James Brown. Maybe Get On Up would be probably a good one.
That's not a bad choice. Not a bad choice. Oh, Jim, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. And it's always great for us to talk to people like yourself on Wavestream, because you bring such amazing technology to our industry that powers a lot of the great things that our industry does. And we all know it's been a difficult 2 or 3 years. But we wish you, your colleagues, your family and friends best of luck. It's going to be great to see you. Great to see you at Satellite. It sounds like you've got some great demos, some great technology to share with the industry. So we wish you a very productive year, and thank you again for taking part today.
Thanks very much.